Good morning, Heather.
So welcome to our Fit and Well podcast. We're excited to be bringing to you, our Durham College and Ontario Tech community, a podcast or vlogcast around all things fitness and wellness. Are you excited for this, Jamie?
Very excited to be doing this with you. Something I've been looking forward to.
So this week, we thought we would discuss the mind-body connection. There's actually a name for the mind-body connection, the study and the research of it. It's called Psychoneuroimmunology, and it's a study of the interaction between our psychological processes, so the way that we're thinking and feeling, and then our nervous and immune system. I found an article from Chopra.com, and they were really discussing the mind-body connection, and they said that for centuries, healers in different professions have recognized that mentally and physically we are connected, but there hasn't been a lot of research and studies to kind of bring it into more of the medical world. So it says that different mental states can either positively or negatively affect our biological functioning. And this is because our nervous and endocrine immune systems share a chemical language. And so major life events, stressors, emotional triggers can actually show up as physical symptoms. Have you experienced this? Have you seen this happen? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And the first thing that comes to mind is a stress response. Physically, there's cortisol that's being released. And then when that happens and when we're stressed, all sorts of things can happen. You can start to perspire and sweat. Your heart rate can increase. You know, people might get really shaky and nervous. So it's just such a common thing that happens to, I think, a lot of people that might not always understand that there's that's in and of itself a mind-body connection. Our mind perceives this stressful event, whatever it might be, and then there's this physiological reaction. So then, so there's a psychological part of it, what we perceive, what we believe, and we see something that maybe we don't like or makes us uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden our body responds to that in a very sometimes subtle way, but sometimes very overt way. Oftentimes it's not until we learn about what a mind-body connection is, or maybe practice meditation or mindfulness, where we can kind of sit back and breathe and be like, okay, what's going on right now?
It's interesting what you said, that for many of us, we experience it daily. Do you remember one of the first times you really noticed that kind of mind-body connection, that your body kind of feels emotions?
Yeah, for sure. Vulnerable moment here, I guess. So back in high school, I was super self-conscious. And anytime or often, if I ever became the center of attention, I would feel it felt like every pore in my body would open and I would start sweating. I'd be like, oh my God, it's so uncomfortable, get me out of here right now. But that's when I kind of started to realize, like, okay, every time something like this happens, I feel this way.
I think for myself, when I think back, one of the first times I used to be a long distance runner, and near the end of the race, when my body was kind of really feeling that tension, I recognized how connected my breath and my thoughts were to my ability to kind of complete the race. So the more I kind of got in my head, and I didn't know it was meditation at that time, but kind of really got into my headspace and was kind of talking to myself and kind of regulating my breathing, I really noticed that mind-body connection. So we have our first guest. Morning, Monique.
Morning.
Hi, Monique.
Morning.
Hi.
So Monique is joining us this morning, and Monique is a trauma-informed movement educator, Reiki master, and yoga teacher. Thanks for joining us to talk about the mind-body connection this morning.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So we were just talking a little bit about how your body can actually feel emotion in your experiences and in the work that you do. How have you seen the mind-body connection kind of play out?
So I would say anytime I've taught a really, I guess you could say, grounded, connected class, and I've had people who have connected with me, there could be some tears. I've had individuals in my class cry a couple of times, and especially individuals who say, I don't ever cry. So I know that it was a series of things like movement, breath, being in the right place in the right time that release, and feeling safe enough to do so, because I have to create a container that feels safe. Being able to witness that in individuals who, you know, rarely or claim that they don't show emotion, but have that type of visceral reaction, has always been kind of rewarding in a sense, because in that moment they are feeling that mind-body connection. They're allowing the tension that exists within their tissues to just expel a bit, as much as they're willing to. Just over time, the posture's feeling held, feeling safe, knowing that you can have that experience. And then, you know, also creating the context with my words and whatever the intention was for the practice. And I've also been able to bear witness to that. And the relationship between, again, I reiterate, feeling safe enough to explore that release.
I'm not practicing yoga right now, or it's been actually a little while. When I first really started getting into it, what stood out the most for me, and Monique, you'd mentioned the breath and how that can kind of be really helpful. When I found I was able to really keep focused on my breath, my yoga movements and practice became so much better. I found that when I spent too much time thinking about, am I doing the pose right? Or just even having a wandering mind, which I so often do, the class was so much harder. But when I was able to focus my breathing, just be in the moment, focus on my body moving, I could hold a pose longer. It flowed so much more naturally and smoothly. And you just get into that flow. That's just the word that's coming right now. So that connection between, you know, our focus and thoughts and keeping in touch with our breath and our bodies, just a huge example of a mind-body connection for me when I was doing yoga.
It's funny because the way that yoga is commercialized is that it is about the asana, it's about the postures, but that's just one limb, right? And breath is also a limb. And what I love is when you kind of deconstruct it, what it will say is, if you focus on the breath can only go two places, an inhale and an exhale. So if you're only focusing on the breath, your mind doesn't have the desire or even the time to wander and go elsewhere. But the moment you forget about the breath and you think about, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? Or I have to do this after class, or that's when you deviate from, you know, that grounded feeling, that centered feeling, that the actual effect of the practice. Yeah, the postures are great, right? They get to move, you get to move, and the idea is to get the breath moving into the body. But also just sitting here and doing a couple moments of pranayama, doing, you know, some simple breath work, that can also help regulate the body and also bring a bit more clarity and centeredness and calm to the mind.
You also do trauma-informed movement. Tell us a little bit more about what is incorporated with that practice.
So to be trauma-informed, you're constantly looking, you're constantly practicing. Being trauma-informed to me is really about knowing what to look for to create a safe space, being able to make the individuals who come into your space feel safe, being able to notice or be aware of the certain triggers that can throw the climate of the class off. But also it is about creating a practice that harnesses resiliency. So, you know, when you're in a space of trauma, that can oftentimes be the color that identifies you or the cloak that identifies you. It's almost like you wear it, right? You wear your trauma because you go into places and any little thing can trigger you. But when you try to really embody or ingrain or find practices that create a sense of safety and stability and strength that seeks to nurture resiliency, then we can start to, you know, look at the conversation about we're getting stronger. We're not identified by our trauma. We recognize that it's there, but we are constantly doing things to move ourselves forward, so to speak, but also holding space for whatever comes up. So to be trauma informed, I find you're constantly looking at different things. You're doing your own personal work. There's never a moment where you're not doing your own personal work, because how can I be informed of somebody else's trauma if I'm not looking at my own, right? So it's a really beautiful practice when you kind of delve deeper and you see all of the mechanics of it, you know, the way the vagus nerve comes into play, the amygdala, looking at all the brain components that, you know, create a triggering effect in the individual. And so we are constantly looking for different ways to regulate the body, regulate the mind, and again, create a sense of safety. That's really what it is. You're trying to create a sense of safety.
Does Reiki come into play here? Is that a practice as well where you see mind-body connection? Tell us a little bit more about Reiki healing.
Oh yeah, well, Jamie, you know that. I've definitely had experiences where individuals have come to me, they know something is off. They don't feel the vitality in their life. It is a sense of being here, but not being here. And there's a stress that accompanies that. I posted something recently because a lot of people ask, what is Reiki? And the general consensus is that it's the universal energy moving through the conduit, which is me, the person that's administering the Reiki. But honestly, I just look at it as Reiki is love. When you feel that love, again, you come back to that context of safety, right? There's that moment. I've had people cry on my table. The moment that either I put my hands on the individual, or if they're not feeling safe, you know, it's hands off, but I can still administer it. The Reiki moves the body, moves the energy through the body, through the channels of energy, through the chakras. Listening to them, me revealing things that come through, they start to feel seen, they start to feel heard, they start, you know, it's those aha moments of, oh my gosh, that is exactly what's happening to me. They actually don't feel so alone in what they've been going through. And what I like to equate Reiki with is hope, right? You come in and you're feeling a little bit or a lot not connected, you feel lost, and I give you love, right? And I also provide a sense of hope to remind you that all's not lost. And, you know, the stress that was accumulating in your body because of the anxiety over work or over feeling lost or over not knowing where you're going to go or just feeling off, that dissipates because now there's a sense through the Reiki, there's a sense of feeling wholeness. And that wholeness is what helps you to detach from that feeling of I'm lost or I need something to make me feel complete, because you start to realize that completeness is within. You don't really need to look further. So to me, Reiki is a form of remembering, and remembering that everything that you need is within the body, and everything that you need is within this vessel, and your connection to source, your connection to the divine, your connection to other things or something bigger than yourself, where you're feeling that energy of love, you're feeling that energy of you are safe, I'm guiding you. And ultimately, I believe it returns you back to a space of faith, right? That I'll get through this. And I trust myself enough to know that I can get through this. And I've been given that sense of you're okay, things are going to be okay.
Something that Jamie was mentioning earlier is the importance of building your awareness to that mind-body connection. And it very much is resonating with what you just shared of you helping to create space and place for individuals to feel safe, to kind of cultivate their own sense of awareness, to their own sense of mind-body connection. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I learned Reiki from the same person who taught Monique. So we have the same teacher. One of the things that always kind of really stood out for me, you know, you're sometimes just intuitively moving and kind of guided to certain parts of the body and kind of gravitate to someone's arm or their leg or their knee. You know, so I'm like, oh yeah, I had a knee injury or something like that. So just through those experiences and being open to having, as Monique said, that love, that energy kind of move through you and into that other person. There's this connection, there's this thing that happens. It can provide a lot of help. I've seen so many people with really kind of moderate to severe injuries get Reiki, and you know they heal in half the time that they're expected to. And there's so many cool examples that I could talk about in my family with people who kind of believe in it, who don't really believe in it, but they, you know, as my mom, who's also a Reiki teacher and my dad, who was a big skeptic. He had a knee replacement surgery, and at his age, it was expected to take I think it was 8 weeks recovery. He was fully healed in 5.5 weeks because my mom gave him Reiki every day. Just really cool stuff like that. But going back to the point of a mind-body connection, sometimes I think Reiki can even kind of help bring people's awareness to something, and then having that energy channeled there just helps in the healing. I think it's incredible.
And I think because sometimes we can't quantify some of these experiences, what I've seen happen is people sometimes really minimize their own trauma or stress, what they're going through psychologically, more of their mental health components. And so then when it does start to show up physically, because it's not as incorporated in our Western practices, our medical practices, sometimes we really dismiss the idea of that mind-body connection, both while we're experiencing, when we're seeking treatment and healing opportunities. And so it will be very exciting to see yoga and trauma-informed practices and Reiki really start to be kind of appreciated and cultivated and valued in our communities. Monique, have you noticed a shift in the last few years to more people knowing about these tools and practices?
Thing about this community, I love it, but everybody's looking for the next shiny thing. You may be looking for that quick fix, and what individuals need to understand is that no practice is a quick fix. There's layers to it, right? Individuals who say, if I come to Reiki, are you going to be able to fix me in one shot? No, that's not what's going to happen, right? But I also, you come to me and I look at Reiki as definitely a healing modality, definitely something that any kind of therapist could incorporate into their practices. This is not what I really want to reiterate about all of the practices is they're not passive, right? If you want to heal, you cannot be passive in your healing, right? You have to take accountability. And I feel like when you put somebody else in the driver's seat of your own healing, then you lose the beauty of, unraveling everything that has kind of got you to this point and really grounding yourself in your own strength and your own resiliency and taking charge of your own health. So when you come to me, I say, you're going to be doing homework. And if you're not doing your homework, and it's a consistent thing, because what people don't realize is you come to a Reiki practitioner, and if they're working, typically most are working with an intuitive, not angle, but they're channeling some information. The same messages keep coming up if you haven't worked on it, right? And I've had a couple individuals where, I'll say, this came up last week or last month, have you done anything about it? And they'll say, oh, I really didn't, and if that happens a couple of times, I'm going to say, so I want to help you, but I don't feel that this is working because, I adore the fact that you want to come and you want to get the Reiki, and that feels great, but you have to be an active participant in your healing. And I think only when people really understand that, wow, I have to be an active participant, I can hold your hand. I can say, hey, try this. I can, take whatever I have out of the toolbox of healing that I can use to support you. But if you're not an active participant, and I think that is especially where the mind-body connection comes in, because if somebody goes to a healer, so to speak, and they want them to heal them, they're removing the mind-body connection. They're saying, I want you to heal my body, and I'm going to take my mind out of this and not recognize the immense power that mentally I have to take control of the situation and launch me forward into a space of healing. And so I say to everybody, don't give your power away to a healer. Don't give your power away to, a therapist or, anybody. Yes, we are here to help you. Yes, we are here to support you, and use that. We have tools. Become aware of the tools, and then really watch and become amazed at how you actually heal yourself. Right? All we're doing is providing the context. We're just giving you the things, but it's you that's doing the work. And when you realize that and anchor that in and root that in, the healing and the transformation becomes that much more potent and powerful.
That's beautiful. Very much resonated, Monique. Thank you for that sharing. So how can we get connected to you? Where can we find out more information on how to find you in the community?
So right now, the only place I guess you can find me is on Instagram or Facebook. I am in the process of launching a website. at The Unbound Mystic. On Facebook, it's just Monique Blackman.
Well, thank you so much, Monique, for joining us today. Thank you so much for sharing some of your insights and experiences. This was a great time together, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been wonderful.
Good.
Thanks, Monique.
So, some thoughts on what Monique shared. Did anything really resonate with you? Did you connect with anything deeply?
One of the things I was hoping to actually touch on today, and Monique had kind of brought up, was the vagus nerve. And this is one of the more relatively recent ones when I actually started, doing some research and learning about mind-body connections in a more, even say, academic light. You even mentioned how, say, Eastern philosophies, beliefs, medicine, becoming more mainstream with Western philosophies, beliefs in medicine. With the vagus nerve, I feel that what's most interesting to me is just learning about how that, if you see the diagram of how it goes throughout the body, it touches on, I think, just about every single organ that we have in our bodies. And so these breathing practices that people in the East or from Eastern traditions and medicines and philosophies have known about for centuries and thousands of years, you can activate that vagus nerve by belly breathing, deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. And that, in a Western sense, we would say activates our parasympathetic nervous system. It's also known as the, I think, rest and digest part of our bodily processes, I guess. So every time you do or engage in this diaphragmatic breathing, deep breathing, belly breathing, and you're activating all these responses in your body that help calm you down, that help to de-stress. And when you make that into like a rhythmic, constant practice, that can really help with levels of like anxiety and nervousness and feeling, as Monique said, not centered or grounded. It can really help reel you in and bring you back to a much more calmer sense, a more peaceful sense internally. So that vagus nerve and learning about it is something I find fascinating.
It reminds me of, if individuals are having a panic attack, one of the tools that many people can find helpful is returning to breath and kind of activating their deeper belly breathing during that panic attack. So many of us have experienced firsthand in moments where psychologically we're being stimulated, we're having a panic attack, we're feeling consumed by our grief. There are tools that we have access to, such as breathing, that we can really start to notice how our body and mind are deeply connected. Kelly McConaughey did a TED Talk on how to make stress your best friend.
Yes, I love it.
I loved it. And she really talked about how it's more of our perception of stress that makes it either a chronic killer. In the United States, it's one of the kind of conditions related to things like heart attack. Stress, I think, was like number 9 or 10 on the list.
It was high up there, yeah.
Right, but it was your perception of that stress. So if you perceived that you had the resiliency and grit, that this was something that you could manage and cope with, it did not have the same negative impacts. And so I think that very much speaks to the idea of how Monique was saying, how empowered we are when we bring awareness and control and regulation over our healing process, our thought process.
Yeah, and I think that's also what helps with that a lot, Heather, is just the practice of mindfulness. We have something happen, we have a due date, we have a really big important test coming up, we want to do well, or maybe we have 15 assignments that are due in 2 weeks, and our minds will construct all this stuff. I have to get this done, and what's it going to mean if I don't pass? And we create all this narrative in our mind, plays out in our bodies, as we've kind of been talking about, whether that stress looks like tension. A tense moment isn't just, say, an energetic sort of dialogue. Even like if you were to kind of like paused in a tense moment, you might find your shoulders are shrugged or your fists are clenched. These tense moments that students so often encounter, mindfulness can help us to pause, take that breath, even check in with us. Okay, where's this tension in my body right now? And then when we can physiologically and physically relax, that can also help our mental state relax too. So we take that second, those few moments to breathe, to check in with ourselves, to release that tension, sometimes just by dropping our shoulders and again, taking a few breaths. And it's just that mindfulness piece, I think, that can really go a long way for students. Because I know for me, even when I'm in the office working, I will take a breath and check in with myself, and like, my shoulders will be shrugged because I've been sitting typing for so long. And I know that when I don't do that, I have neck pain and back pain and like just this tension. And so when we can kind of start tapping into that, I just feel so much more loose and relaxed and centered and grounded, and I can stay focused longer. There's just so many benefits to practicing mindfulness, I find.
It reminds me of when we were writing exams on campus, when we were less of a virtual campus, and there'd be sometimes 200, 300 students in the gymnasium, and you'd kind of walk past the window, and the body language, you can see that tension that you're talking about. So students are hunched over, hand in their hair, hands are clenched around their pen, and you can see physically how they might mentally be feeling during that exam.
Yeah, it's just those physical manifestations that almost everyone has. Kind of as Monique was saying too, it's kind of stuck with me too. It's like, if you are looking to get some help and healing and support through a counselor, a therapist, an energy healer, part of that healing does belong to you. And when you start tapping into how those things come up in you and using strategies to kind of, once you have that awareness, deal with it, can help immensely. I know it's helped me a lot too. I can speak to that.
One thing I've often said to students is that when we are feeling it in our body, or we're noticing some of these physical sensations, start to view that as communication. Your body is trying to communicate with you perhaps some of the more mental processes and experiences that you may not have the tools or awareness to fully comprehend. So your body is trying to support you by saying, hey, there's a stomach ache here, I have a sore shoulder here, perhaps because of the stress. On this note, we are going to welcome Amy. Welcome, Amy.
Hi.
Hi, Amy.
Hello. Perfect timing, Amy. Right before you came in, we were talking about how the mind-body connection shows up in our body, and we can see it in students when they're writing exams. They may be clenched and tense. So thank you for joining us. So Amy is a RMT, a registered massage therapist, and you teach at Durham College.
I do. The group that I've got currently, I teach our clinical skills and techniques course. So this is where we start working directly with the hands-on, starting to introduce the lovely relaxation techniques, and then we work into some deeper techniques. And then I also teach our therapeutic exercise course, which I love, love, love. So the massage portion is a very passive process where the therapist does a lot of the work. And then at the end of the session, I really believe in the patient having an active role in their recovery as well. So we teach home care where they can stretch and exercise and do things that contribute and really build upon the massage session that they had, so that they've received the full benefits of the treatment.
So tell us, in your experience, how have you seen that mind-body connection?
So I teach workshops as well on behavior change. Really interesting, because there's no such thing as an ineffective behavior, because if it wasn't effective, we wouldn't do it. So there's more effective behaviors and less effective behaviors. So if we take the example you just gave of a student, let's say feeling really anxious before a test, and they have choices about how they're going to behave. So to reduce that stress, some decisions we make are, maybe we decide to hang out with a friend instead of studying. Maybe we consume alcohol or smoke or do something to, in the moment, reduce that level of anxiety. The next day when your test arrives, your anxiety level is now through the roof because you've chosen what I would consider a less effective behavior. It's great in the moment, but long term there's ramifications. So a more effective behavior is, how can we reduce our stress or anxiety to put us in a place that moving forward or in the future it's going to be helpful to us. So a massage, as an example, is a great way to reduce that anxiety feeling in the moment. It reduces the physical pain that we feel. So we know that anxiety can manifest as physical pain, so it can impact that. And then it allows for greater focus, right? If our mind is clear, if we are more calm, then we can then turn our focus to our studies. So we can use the benefits of massage in that sense. So It's interesting. There's a lot of research coming out right now. Finally, thankfully, there's, you know, this scientific proof that massage has benefits to reduce anxiety and depression, but it's still so new. It was very anecdotal. It was, trust us, it helps, right? But now it's really coming through in the science. So I'm like thrilled to see that, because it's so connected. That mind body is so connected.
Do you have any experiences where either clients that have came to you or students that you teach are maybe sharing with you, wow, mentally this is where I was, and physically I didn't realize there was that connection? Have you ever experienced that before?
What we're learning right now is really gentle techniques to have an impact on the bodies. An example is we're learning a technique called static contact. So the hands quite literally just rest on the body, and my students are looking at me and they're looking for that feedback, like, am I doing it right? I'm like, yeah. So like, okay, what else do I do? I'm like, no, that's it, it's just that. So it's interesting to see like how powerful that contact and that connection is. And then what I tell them to look for is physiological changes in the patient's body. So you can actually feel and see when you've got your hands on a patient, and you'll see them go, and they'll actually take a nice deep breath. And they say, wow, what are you doing? It's just the contact. So even just that breath and that relaxing, then when they get off the table, you know, the feedback that patients give are, you know, I'm so relaxed, my head is so clear, I don't feel so distracted. Like a lot of these that they came in because their neck was sore, but as they describe how they're feeling afterwards with, I said, my head's clear, I don't feel fuzzy, that fog is lifted, that kind of stuff, I think is a way that they're saying that it's connected to their mind, but they might not realize it right away.
Absolutely. So they came in because perhaps they were feeling that pain, that tension in their neck and their shoulders, but then they're leaving recognizing how much perhaps that has helped also cleared mentally. Pain
is a very powerful motivator, right? And I think sometimes we don't book a massage because we're stressed, right? We think this is how it is. I'm going through a stressful time, and people don't necessarily think to do something for that specifically, but they'll book something because they're in physical pain. They want that fixed, right? But I think the anxiety is that it's like a mental pain, right? But we just deal with it in various ways that are more or less effective. And so we want to think of what that looks like in the long term for us.
Jamie, have you experienced massage yourself? Have you gone for those type of therapeutic practices?
I have, and I think I'm long overdue at this point. But yeah, I know I store a lot of my tension in my neck and my shoulders. And I try to do a little bit at home with a little cross ball, but it never really, it's not the same. I mean, sometimes it's not always pleasant to get a massage because you got to work, and sometimes it sucks, actually, let's be honest. But what it's moving, what it's kind of looking to ease and relax afterwards, yeah, I totally agree with Amy. I feel calmer, like internally, like emotionally, mentally. It definitely has that connection between that physiological part of me that's now, you know, moved some kinks, some knots, they're kind of gone, or they're less than what they used to be. And I feel psychologically, I guess, again, more calm, more at peace, more at ease. And it's great. And I think that's what keeps me coming back for the pain and the torment when they're working through those tough spots, my back and my shoulders.
Use the analogy of like sitting on a tack, right? So if you're sitting on a tack and you've got that, you can feel it and it's nagging, how can you focus when your attention is being drawn back to that tack, right? So it could be your neck pain, it could be wherever it's coming from, right? So alleviating that then allows the mind to go to and focus on what we want it to, instead of that distractor.
It just came to me now thinking about that. Whenever I'm doing something uncomfortable, sometimes it might be working out, it might be getting a massage, it might be just doing something where my body is, you know, in an uncomfortable state. Just going back to what we were talking about with the breath, finding when I breathe through things just makes things so much easier. When I'm not breathing, and again, I think that's part of the stress response, or breathing gets shorter and more shallow. When you intentionally make yourself breathe deeper and bring that oxygen into your body, it makes those sometimes difficult massages a little more bearable.
Jamie,
Yeah.
I wonder, since we're talking about the mind-body connection today, and Amy, in your own experiences, I wonder if sometimes that those more discomforting massages, how much of that is perhaps what we are mentally going through? Perhaps we're feeling that it's a more physically uncomfortable process, but I wonder if it's because we're also working through some more emotional stuff on the table.
Absolutely. That's a large focus of our program, is how do you emotionally support a patient without crossing over that scope of practice. You're not a therapist, but that stuff comes up. As soon as you place your hands on people, the stories, and it's amazing what people will share. And I think part of that is the trust that's built in that professional relationship. But I think absolutely just having that professional physical connection with somebody, it just brings up so much. And we see that with almost everybody that gets on my table. Yeah.
For students and our Durham College and Ontario Tech communities that maybe have never experienced massage before, any tips or tricks that can help students kind of show up and maybe book a first appointment? How can we help get students to more RMTs like yourself and the students you are educating?
Just book it. It used to be, the perception used to be that massage is just a luxury and people wouldn't do it unless they had the time or the funds. So what's an amazing thing about our student clinic is that it's offered at a reduced cost. So it's a win-win. The people that come in pay a lesser fee, and then it gives our students this incredibly valuable experience when they get their hands on a variety of patients. So what to expect: you come in, we go through a full health history. I think people are surprised at how much information we gather, because we're truly healthcare practitioners that need to see the whole picture. So we do a full intake, we do assessments, we look at how you stand, how you move, what's bothering you, what do you want to get out of the treatment. So there's this intake process, and then you talk about what you would like to have worked on. The students work on that for you, and then at the end they'll give you that home care piece as well, which is phenomenal. So it's, I think, the whole package.
And I like how you mentioned there's more passive moments, and then there's more moments that you can be more engaged, because I know for myself, sometimes when I've gotten a massage, I fall asleep in a very passive moment getting the massage itself. So I love that additional piece of really keeping your clients from in that active place in their own journees.
I've had patients say to me, I'm good, I don't need to do this, I just want to come for the massage. But it's something, I think my background, I worked in strength and conditioning for just over 10 years, so I'm really confident in that aspect of it. So I want to make sure that when our students are in the program, they really see the value of that. It's not just the one piece of the hands-on treatment. There's so much value in the, so I hope there's more of a movement to that, more like the encouraging autonomy with the patient's care, because when they feel like they're contributing, when they're buying in, I think the results are significantly greater when they feel like they've got control over their outcomes.
Do you notice a difference as an RMT with your clients that are doing the home care, they're participating more in that healing? Do you notice a difference?
100%. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the speed of healing, the pain reports are less. They just, the frequency then of massage can go down. So Jamie mentioned the lacrosse ball rolling, which is phenomenal. So what I find is there's so many layers of tension. And so when somebody comes to see me, I'm working through those layers, and I might only get through the first few. And where that pain or that root of the issue are coming from is so much deeper. But if you're only coming or not doing anything in between, or you're coming very infrequently, I'm only hitting those superficial layers every time you come in. So if you have a massage, and then like Jamie said, he does the lacrosse ball rolling, that keeps a lot of that superficial junk out of the way. And the next time you come in, I can really get access to those deeper structures that are holding the root of the issue, and then we really get a chance to clear it out and eliminate it. And that's where we see the big changes.
Fantastic. So how can students and staff find out more about how to book their first or their 100th appointment? How can students find out more information?
So there is a link. They should be able to find it on the DC Massage Therapy page. There's been a slower start because we've got some new protocols in place, but everything that massage therapists in the profession that are practicing, our students have to follow the exact same regulations, all the cleaning protocols, all the masking protocols. So it's a safer environment. We've really mitigated the risk of being in that such physical close contact. So looking for a link they can book online for a massage.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Amy. It was great hearing a little bit about your insight and sharing. And I look forward to booking my next massage soon.
Amazing. That'd be great. Great.
I'm a massage lover. I've been going since I was a really young lad. I've been going and getting massages since I was younger, and I've really noticed that clearing that happens, clear that physical tension as well. I notice how deeply it's connected to what I'm maybe processing and going through mentally. So big advocate for getting massages.
Having had them in the past, I know just how good I feel afterwards. I was thinking that, yeah, maybe I should probably go get a massage or engage in some of those practices that I might haven't done as much of or at all in a little while. Yeah.
And Durham College students, they do have access to some health benefits through their DCSI Inc. benefit health plan. I think it's important to use those benefits. You're paying for them, and they will cover a large majority of the cost for a massage. And I think too, as we've been talking, there's also gentle things that you can be doing, whether it's breath or moving your body at home. So once you kind of bring awareness to that idea of, oh, I'm feeling really stressed, I'm feeling really tense, even just getting up and going for a walk, it may not be the exact same as a massage, but again, it kind of taps into that idea of if we add some flow and some movement in our body, work on that physical tension, it can also help clear our mind.
I follow a few therapists on Instagram and on social media that in part of their therapeutic modality is movement, as you were saying, Heather, and it's using bodily movements to move through emotion, to move through pain, move through discomfort. And there seems to be more research going into the effectiveness of body movements, a good part of someone trying to move through something, whether it is through counseling or healing of some sort. So yeah, very fascinating and interesting.
Well, on that note, a great segue, we have Debbie and Kelly joining us, owners and teachers of Power Yoga Canada, Oshawa. Welcome, Debbie.
Thanks.
Hi, Debbie, and welcome, Kelly.
Hi, ladies.
Hi, guys.
Hi. We were just talking about the connection between movement and our bodies and our minds. Tell us a little bit in your experiences, what drew you to yoga and what do you notice with your beautiful community when it comes to movement being connected to what we're going through mentally, that mind-body connection?
For me, the movement of yoga just helps me to kind of move around anything that's sitting in my body. So any energy, whether it's stress or anxiety or something negative that's sitting there, similar to how you'd work out. But for yoga, I don't know why, but there's something so magical about the movement and how it all comes together. And I 100% like always leave feeling so much lighter. There's this feeling of like more peace and this feeling of lightness and definitely like less stress in my body. So I think it's just the way, maybe it's even combined with the way that you move your energies through the chakras, a little different than if I was to like hit my weights and work out. And I think like the breath that we do, Ujjayi, in our practice really helps to kind of create that really calmness in your body versus bringing your adrenaline up and your cortisol up with a high intensity workout. Our community always says, I love the saying of sometimes that women will come and they'll say like, my husband like sent me to yoga because I'm like yelling at my kids. and then they go home and they're like this different human. So I think it's the same thing for most of our community. They just walk away feeling better. And we always say, like, the goal of our practice is that you walk out feeling rinsed, like physically rinsed, mentally rinsed, maybe emotionally rinsed, whatever it is that you need that day.
Mm-hmm. I often hear from both of you and your other wonderful instructors that how we show up on our mat is often how we're showing up in life. And I know for myself, if I'm going through something mentally, I'm feeling really stressed, I'm experiencing some grief, I'll avoid my mat, not necessarily consciously, but I'll be like, oh, I haven't done yoga in a very long time. And Jamie, I know you were mentioning that earlier as well, that life will get busy and full of stress, and sometimes we avoid those tools where it might show up in other ways.
Yeah, definitely. There's we call it like a hiding. God, I can't deal with this right now. Right? You go to yoga and you're gonna be confronted with the things that are sitting there, the things that are relevant for you.
And why do you think yoga allows that? Why do you think yoga allows us to kind of tap into some of those experiences and thoughts more?
I think the transformational conversation really helps too. So you're moving your energy around, and then as you're feeling all the feels, the teacher, or maybe they say something that just triggers a thought in your head of knowing that you're good enough, and then suddenly that not good enough story needs to be dealt with, like, in that moment. So I think it's that added element of spirituality and transformation for sure.
Because I notice the feeling that I get from a yoga community when I'm in a studio, it feels very different than a community at a gym or a more kind of strictly physical space. I've noticed that the community, especially at PYC Oshawa, there is this sense of family and connection. And do you guys feel that as well in your studio?
It's really, really important that everybody just feels connected to us. I mean, that's how it started, why we wanted to open a studio in the first place. I mean, when I lived in Mississauga, the very first Power Yoga Canada opened, and that was my favorite part of it. And when I learned that I was going to be moving, the first thing I thought of is I'm going to be away from my people. It wasn't even yoga. I know yoga's everywhere, but it was like, I'm going to be away from my community. And so that's what inspired me to want to open a studio and find somebody as amazing as Kelly to work with to create that community in another city. And people are flowing in the room and they're breathing at the same time as they're moving. They're actually creating a connection, whether they know it or not. They're creating an energetic connection within each other, and it becomes sort of like a hypnotic pace that happens with everybody kind of roughly all around at the same time. And it sort of just becomes this one unit moving together. And then at the end of it all, they've opened themselves up to feeling more love and joy and peace, that they come out of the room wanting to just share it with everybody. And they start talking to each other, and they can't even help it. They don't even know why. And then it's that connection that they crave, the next day. Stuff happens in life, and all they want to do is go back into that environment and feel that openness again.
I know as well at your studio, besides the more physical practice of yoga, you also do a variety of different workshops, such as the breath work. What are you noticing with some of those other tools?
So breath work, well, Kelly started breath work, or she found it when she visited a friend in California, and then it just blew her away and opened her up into so many different avenues and doorways sort of into her life and looking into her life. So she shared it with us, and of course sharing is how it goes. And we didn't really get to practice it, but then when I went to India, I got to practice it suddenly. And I don't think that was a coincidence. It really brought me back to being like, oh my God, this has to be at our studio. And it really is another way to open yourself up. It's obviously not physical. Breathwork isn't a physical practice, although you'll feel a lot of physical sensations. You're just laying down, getting into a really deeper level of your consciousness and your subconsciousness. And it's just another great tool to open yourself up to more peace, more love, more joy, because that's what happens when you clear yourself. And it's a very cleansing, sometimes very emotional, which we believe that everybody trying to stay strong for everybody throughout the day, holding back their emotions, holding back their tears, can actually create more harm in the body and more disease in the body. And in one session, you just feel completely, I don't know, like whole again, healed. You're yet again, another completely different human walking out into your family life and your career and your job life, and people see that.
Do you notice that a lot of individuals might come at first expecting more of a physical practice, but then they're leaving more understanding how the mind body is connected, and that perhaps they needed to work a little bit more on themselves psychologically, mentally? Do you hear that from some of your community?
I know for the yoga community, it's like that. I remember, like, I've seen people bring in like pop into the room, coffee into the room. They walk it, they're you know, chain smokers, and then I don't even think people understand what happens to them. They come in and they're like, oh, I feel really great after, and you just got your butt kicked. Because our practice, our power yoga practice, and our belief is that the way to transform your life is to bring yourself physically to your edge at the point where you're ready for a breakdown, and that's the only way to get through to your breakthrough. So people are coming and they're like, that was so challenging. You're in it and you're like, I never want to do this ever again. And then what happens is that you go home and you're like, oh, I'm craving that feeling I got after. And then you come back for more, and then you do it again, and then the same thing happens, and then eventually you quit smoking, and the coffee doesn't come in with you, and the pop doesn't come in with you, and all these things start to change like in such little increments. And then suddenly you're like, I feel like I'm a yogi, and like I feel spiritual, and I've got this spiritual practice that kind of just landed on me. So it's really cool that way. I don't think really people understand. They come in definitely with an intention of like, not everybody, but a lot of people with like, I'm not flexible, I want to stretch, or my doctor told me to come to yoga, or my friend dragged me here, or someone's lost weight doing the physical practice. And then they leave with so much more mentally. I think mentally just getting stronger and believing in themselves more.
For some of our students or college campus community that might be a little bit nervous about starting yoga, do you have any words of wisdom?
Honestly, everybody will have all the excuses in the world why to not walk in our door. I think you just have to walk in our door, and you'll feel the energy of the space, the teacher, the openness, the fact that we're all just human beings really on the similar journees. I think it's you got to jump in there, and you, like Kelly said, you don't have to be flexible. In fact, I would prefer you not flexible because you know what I mean? That's how you're going to get flexible, right? There's so many different levels in the room all at the same time. The teacher will speak to all different kinds of modifications, because it's not just beginners that need modifications. People with injuries need modifications. People who just are feeling low energy that day, they need modifications, and they need to know them. And that's why we don't segregate beginners from an intermediate group. It's because it's just completely pointless. Everybody needs to have access to modifications in any given moment. And it's just such a welcoming environment that you just got to walk in the door. Now, the way to find us, to email us at oshawa@poweryogacanada.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram at PYC Oshawa. Find your way in.
Yes.
And we have amazing student membership rates. Most people start with their introductory month because they want to get used to the practice. They want to create sort of like a habit, and within that month, you can come as many times as you want, and that gives you an opportunity to really see if it's something that fits for you. Students, we know that you guys are, spending money on school, so we offer like an incredible student discount. So I'll find out about that as well.
Thank you both so much for your time today and speaking a little bit about the beautiful space you've created there at PYC Oshawa. And I hope many of our college campus gets connected.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Bye, Jamie.
Going back to some common things that our guests have spoken about. Monique and the ladies from Power Yoga, they talked about breath. Amy and Monique talked about the importance of having that safe space. So I think, there's been some interesting and important things that go into not only just mind-body connections, but if you're beginning to explore them, and whether you're doing yoga, going to counseling or therapy, there's certain foundational things that I think help a lot with that and have come out today. So it's been a pretty well-rounded discussion, I think.
Yes. And I think regardless of your current financial situation, access situation, especially during this pandemic, sometimes access to some of these services can be a bit of a struggle or a bit of a challenge. And so, like you said, there's a lot of overlap in today's discussion. So some things that I really took away is the importance of building your own sense of awareness to that mind-body connection, using your body as a channel for communication, and then the importance of things like breath, feeling safe, moving your body. These are all tools that we can actively participate in our dorms, in our homes, if not able to access due to finances or just conditions outside of our control in the community.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing too, is you don't always need to see a professional. I mean, sometimes it helps, but you don't always need other people to help you through like healing, health, wellness. There's all these things people can do for free, on the bus, on the way to work, at the comfort in their room or at home, right? So,
and if you want some guidance in that, if you want to learn how to use these tools, get connected to some of the professionals through our Campus Health and Wellness Center, we have individuals like yourself, Jamie, wellness coaches. We also have counselors, mental health nurses that are here to help you build those pathways to some of these healing and wellness tools. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for today's podcast, Jamie.
Thank you, Heather. It's been a great conversation.
On that note, stay fit, stay well, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.